everyone. We're so happy that you're here tonight to celebrate the work of Dr. Marilyn Galvin Stewart. We're going to give you a little bit of acknowledgement of our series. And I'm Stephanie Daker, Associate Professor of Art Education at Miami University.
And I'm Luke Meekin, Assistant Professor of Art Education at Miami University.
We're going to start with our land acknowledgement.
Kick things off with the acknowledgement of the space that we're in and the history of that space where we're learning and living today. Miami University is located within the traditional homelands of the Miami and Shawnee people, who along with other indigenous groups ceded these lands to the United States in the First Treaty of Greenville in 1795. The Miami people, whose name our university carries, were forcibly removed from these homelands in 1846. In 1972, our relationship between the Miami University and the Miami Tribe of Oklahoma began and evolved into a reciprocal partnership, including the creation of the Miami Center at Miami University in 2001. The work of the Miami Center serves the Miami Tribe community and is dedicated to the revitalization of Miami language and culture and to restoring that knowledge to the Miami people. Miami University and the Miami Tribe are proud of this work and of the Miami students who have attended Miami since 1991 through the Miami Heritage Program. And if you'll excuse me for reading directly off the page, but this was co-authored with our Miami friends, brothers, sisters, collaborators, right? Scholars at the Miami Center. And it's their words, so it's really important that I don't distort their words, right? This land acknowledgement is a sort of statement of intent. It's important, it's significant, but it's also a beginning, right? And our department, we're so fortunate in the art department to be able to partner with, and our students get to partner with and collaborate with the Miami Center and our friends and scholars there in ongoing work, and that's an important next step beyond an acknowledgement like this.
Okay, and now I'd like to tell you a little bit about this lecture series, which some of you know about, but it's probably new to a lot of you. So the John A. and Betty J. Michael Autobiographical Lecture Series in Art Education was initiated by Dr. John Michael with a generous gift from he and his wife Betty in 1972 when Edwin Ziegfeld lectured at Miami University. Outstanding educators who have retired or are near retirement are invited to present autobiographical lectures in the series, noting the influences which have shaped their philosophy about art education and the arts. In 1991, John Michael was the featured lecturer himself, adding to the ongoing lineup of influential and honored speakers. As part of an effort to make this important series more widely accessible, we also have a digital archive. So your work will be included in the digital archive, and Luke's doing a lot of work with the digital archive. So that's a part of each speaker's visit that we record the different events. And although this digital opportunity wasn't imaginable at the series inception, we believe that it honors the mission of the series in sharing and honoring the important contributions of so many prominent art educators. All right, so I guess it's time for me to introduce our speaker. Let me give a few thank yous first. Thank you to Jack Green and the staff at the Richard and Carol Cox Art Museum for letting us host our event here. This is wonderful. This is always a really special space to host events. Thank you. Dr. Ryan Fisher, our dean, is here tonight, and he'll be presenting Marilyn with an award at the very end of the lecture. So thank you very much. Thank you to students that are here for class and also as part of the art education program. We're really happy that you're all here. Thank you to Marilyn's family who's come. That's really special that you're here. We know we have some visitors online that couldn't come in person from lots of different places, so we definitely welcome you to the event. Thank you to faculty members that are here from the art department and other places. And student teachers, we really value your time, and we're very happy to see you here too. So thank you all to be here. All right. Marilyn Galvin Stewart is Professor Emerita at Kutztown University of Pennsylvania and recipient of the university's major awards for research and teaching. Dr. Stewart is the author of Experience Art, senior author of the elementary textbook series Explorations in Art, and co-author of the middle school series Art and the Human Experience. She is co-author of Rethinking Curriculum in Art, author of volume Art Education and Practice series published by Davis Publications. Marilyn is a frequent keynote speaker and consultant in meetings and conferences throughout the nation and abroad. In decades of service to the field of art education, including her early years of elementary and middle school art teaching, Dr. Stewart has initiated or been a consultant to numerous national and local curriculum projects, some of which will be described here tonight. Dr. Stewart has conducted more than 200 extended professional development institutes, seminars, or in-service days over 35 states. A distinguished fellow of the National Art Education Association, Marilyn has received numerous awards for her contributions and was named the 2011 National Art Educator of the Year by the National Art Education Association. Her talk tonight is called Who's Calling? My Professional Life as a Series of Phone Calls. In this lively review of key events in her professional role as an art educator, Dr. Stewart shares how, as with the call and response of improvisational jazz, we make choices in response to opportunities, often arriving in the form of a phone call, and encounter people, places, and ideas that collectively impact the emerging composition of our lives. So please help us welcome Dr. Marilyn Galvin Stewart.
It's going to be lively because I brought my fan club. And I'm really happy to be here. And I really appreciate you being here. And as Stephanie said, I'm very excited about the people who are out there on Zoom. But like the one group of women, good friends, they're talking, and I'm hearing it I'm seeing it, I'm hearing the buzzing on my watch. And I look down, oh yeah, somebody else has said something. So they're talking to each other while we're here. So thank you so much, Stephanie and Luke. What a lovely event. I'm so honored, honestly. I was brought to tears when I watched my family walk in, I have to say. But I'm almost there now, just thinking about the people on this list who have received this award in the past. These are people who have been my friends, some of them, very close, and colleagues. They've been my mentors. They're my heroes, So, and they know who they are if they're off there, and I know some of them are. So it's such an honor to be a part of this and to get my name on there and on the digital. I'm very excited about that. Late at night, I'll go on and watch myself talk. see how I did. So thank you. Now I actually have notes here just a minute. Can you hear me okay? I've got a mic. Okay. What I didn't do was say thank you to the John and Betty Michael Autobiographical lecture series, and I think it's not a foundation, it's an endowment. Yeah, what a great thing that they did, envisioning the future. And those of you who are out here are going to be art teachers, and these are people, who have impacted our field, and the things that you're learning in your classes came from so many of their ideas. So it's great to have them here, and as you learn about the history of our field, you'll be maybe going back to the archive and taking a look at what people have said. Okay. So a lot of times I would have students come to me, a lot of times grad students who were tired of teaching, and they said, I just want to do something else. I'm not sure where I want to go. I'm not sure what to do. Can you help me? And I said, yes, read this book. And the book is by Mary Catherine Bateson, who is Margaret Mead's daughter, by the way, and Gregory Bateson, for those of you who know who he is. She wrote this book, and I read it, and as I said, recommended it to others. She looked at 5 women who had reached a certain degree of success and interviewed them. And as she did that, she realized that they all talked about the choices that they made during their lives that made a difference in the direction they went. And she talks about how important it is to think of ourselves as creating our lives, and that there are these moments, and then she'll call it like a call and response in improvisational jazz, where you get the call and how you respond determines the composition and the piece of music. And so I use that because it's been a part of how I think about things. And so it's easy then to come up with this idea of, oh, wait a minute, how does this work? It's not, don't I have to aim this at? Oh, I went too fast. Okay, all right, so as I thought about got this invitation, that was a great, they don't come in the form of phone calls anymore, they're emails or texts, So I got the email from Stephanie, wow, and I started thinking about, what am I gonna say, how am I gonna do this? So I started thinking about my life as, like Mary Catherine Bateson talks about, a response to certain opportunities that have been given to me at different times, usually arriving, as I said, in the form of a phone call, and then realizing that there are, the way I respond to those has made all the difference as I think about my life. And by the way, I don't know if you heard that, but you have to be old to get this invitation. So when you think about your life, you got a lot to think about. So did a lot of thinking, and I thought about the phone calls. And so I'm sharing that with you tonight as I think about this life that I've lived, and I happily lived it, and hopefully gonna live a lot more. So, okay, see, I don't have this. Okay, right, all right. So, as part of this idea, when you have the opportunity and you make the decision and you go wherever it is that you've been called to go, it's not just going there, it's the people who you meet and who they are and how they impact your thinking. It's the places. That's geography is important, but it's really the culture of the place where you land. And that's going to make such a difference. Of course, that's dependent a lot on the people. And then, of course, the ideas. So these are all intertwined. So the people that you meet and you work with, the ideas that sort of bubble up from your conversations and so on, that becomes so important as you think about the directions that you've taken throughout your life. So I'll be talking about the people, I'll be talking about the places, and I'll be talking about the ideas as they've evolved from an early time on. But as I talk about the people, yeah, these are my first people. These are my people who are on the Zoom tonight, except for my mom and my dad. This is a picture of a Michigan, I grew up in Cincinnati. We went to Michigan sometimes in the summers. This is a photograph from one of those times. Where do you think I am? Yeah, I'm the one that's scowling over here. Yeah, my sister Jenny, who later became a painter, wasn't in this picture. She wasn't born yet. But when she was born, timing is everything, and I can't get this up. Jeez. Okay. Jenny was a painter, and for a long time she did paintings of our family, particularly what that involved my mother. My mother died. She was always trying to find her mother, and so she looked at a lot of those photographs, old photographs, and this is her rendition of that family photograph. Do you think there's a secret here? I don't know. Yeah, what's picking this up? Okay. Okay. Oh, my word. Okay, well here, this is the next one, which is another trip to Michigan. We were all together. This is my family, my brothers and sisters, Don, Marilyn, Johnny, Tommy, Jenny. And so our parents raised us, they were creative. They were always making something, whether it's good clothing or new, hand tailored clothing or gardening or a place in the basement for us to hang out. I mean, they were very creative. And the girls in the family particularly became, artistic. My brothers picked up some of the other skills that my parents taught us, which was, and we all learned this, and that is to value friendships and to value curiosity and to always be learning something new. So that's my family and background. unfortunately passed away from breast cancer, so we lost her baby sister. That's not fun. Oh, goodness. Okay. So I, this is me, and this is me in kindergarten. I remember the day like it was yesterday when I had a meltdown. It was picture day, and my mother had given me this new outfit, and I insisted that I wanted my artwork pinned on my new outfit for the picture. And my teacher disagreed with me, and we had it out. And I won. And so what you see there is my artwork attached to my outfit. And for the longest time, I knew this picture existed, and I kept saying to my sisters and brothers, does anybody have this picture of me in kindergarten with the picture? Nobody could find it. Finally, my sister Donna found it, and she sent it to me. And when I looked more closely, I realized there was something else there. I'll do that one advance. Back one. Okay. So this here is actually something else that I thought, oh, how interesting. This is my grandmother, Gertie, she crocheted, and for every holiday, we would get in the mail, we would get a card for Valentine's Day or Easter or whatever. And it would always have a handkerchief in it that she crocheted this beautiful lace along the edges. And some of them would have an M, the handkerchief would have an M. I still have them. I don't know what to do with them, but I have them. At any rate, so I obviously cared about my grandmother's handkerchief as well, which I love, and you'll see why, because I eventually get very much interested in handwork, and I teach about it. So it's kind of interesting that was so much a part of me at that time. Yes. Okay, so my mother had a friend who was married to an artist, a real artist. He did portraits, he was a painter. His name was William E. Gebhardt, and he had an art school in downtown Cincinnati. And he would come to our house, and again, I'm an advocate for myself, you could see that I was. When he appeared at the door with his wife Gladys, I would be right there with my portfolio. And I'd be showing him my artwork all the time. What do you think of this? What do you think of this? What do you think of this? So finally, and I did this so much, that finally he said to my parents when I was 8 in the 3rd grade, he said, if you'll pay for her art supplies, she can come to the Saturdays classes. So at 8 years of age, and I don't know if you know Cincinnati, but Mount Washington is way on the east side, I would get on a bus by myself, 8 years old, and go on this bus to downtown Cincinnati, walk from, they called it Government Square, where all the buses came in, walk from there like 2 blocks to right in front of the Greyhound bus station, and above the chili parlor and another bar, to the 2 floors above there to the art school of William E. Gebhardt. And that's where I learned everything there was to know about art, because the nuns at Guardian Angel only had us copying Hallmark greeting cards. So what I learned at the art school of William E. Gebhardt is that art is realism. It's like that's what you're doing. You're trying to make everything look real. And it's all about technique. I think that's probably a lot of you can identify with that. This Woody would really, I can remember scrambling into the back of that with our paint boxes and going up to Eden Park, if you're familiar with Eden Park, or we would go over to Fountain Square, where we would set up our easels and people then would come by and tell us what to do. They would all, we'd have these critics. But at any rate, that was a wonderful experience for me, and I loved being in Eden Park. The only problem is, oh yeah, dancing once. Up over the hill, those of you who know Cincinnati, over the hill is the Cincinnati Art Museum. No one ever thought to take me there. I was a nutcase about art, and nobody thought to take me to the Cincinnati Art Museum. And can you imagine how my ideas would have expanded had I just had an opportunity to go in there? So I actually went to Ohio State, and you'll hear about that. And when I was in an art history class, I thought to myself, surely there must be an art museum in Cincinnati. And so I went back home for a break and found it. I put together a portfolio of realistic and very well, really good technique art. And I carried that up with me to Ohio State and got a scholarship. And so they gave me a scholarship, plus they said I didn't have to take any of those early, the foundation courses, which turns out wasn't the best thing, because they put me in advanced painting, and I had this crisis of confidence. And those of you who you might be familiar with this, they were taping canvases with masking tape and painting with acrylic paint, like shapes. What did I know about shapes? I was painting, bridges in Eden Park. I didn't know anything about this. So they were taping canvases. So I had no idea what they were doing, but I could do it. I did it, got good grades, I had no idea what I was doing, but I did a whole heck of a lot of paintings that looked just like that. And anyway, I had this crisis of confidence as an art major. My father's idea was that I should go to college for at least a year. That's what he said. 1 year, then you'll meet the right man. Seriously, we're talking, this is true. This is the way it was. So I did. I met a wonderful guy, and he happened to be a lawyer, which thrilled my father to know that. Like, she's really doing this well. And I dropped out of school and I got married. I had a bit of a portfolio, and my husband went to Vietnam, and when we shipped our stuff from Fort Bragg, North Carolina to Cincinnati, where I was going to stay for the year while he was gone, the moving van was broken into, and my portfolio was among the stuff. Nobody's after it, trust me. But it was with the stuff that got stolen. So I didn't have a portfolio. All right, now, so I was trying to put together a portfolio to making, I had no idea what I was doing, to making little drawings that I thought maybe I could put together. And people were saying, well, you ought to teach. No, I don't want to teach. And everybody kept telling me I should be a teacher. I kept saying, no, I don't want to be a teacher. No, I want to be an artist. That's my dream. So I thought that I could put together a portfolio and make art greeting cards. I remember grade school, that's why I learned how to do greeting cards. At American Greetings, which was at the time, I don't know if it is still, in Cincinnati. And but in the meantime, this business about teaching, I said, okay, I'll take a look. So I got a teaching job at Reading Middle School in Cincinnati, teaching language arts, because they looked at my transcripts. I had a lot of English and language, Shakespeare stuff. And so they said, you should teach language arts. Well, anyway, the person who was going to go on leave decided not to go, and I get this call from this woman, Sister Denise, from St. Michael's School in Sharonville, Ohio. And as I said here, this is probably the most important call of all the calls I'm going to talk about today, because she said, I got your name from Reading Middle School or Reading School District, and they said, that you were applied for teaching, blah, blah, blah. Would you come out and talk to me? I need somebody to teach 5th grade. I said, I don't know how to teach, sister. I have no clue how to teach. Just come, I'll help you. So she told me later, because I had a little Volkswagen Bug, and actually a coat this color. And she said she saw me from the window, and she saw me get out of this little Volkswagen Bug in this bright green coat, and decided that she was going to hire me. So we had a great time. I had no clue that I was supposed to be intimidated whatsoever by this principal, whose office was right across from my classroom. I had the door open. I was learning. I learned so much. I was having so much fun after school. I'd go in and talk to her and say, I tried this, I did this. And she was just the best mentor ever. No judgment, just helping me learn how to teach. I was so excited. The kids were great. The community was great. Such a caring community. And I took coursework at Xavier University. And that's when I started thinking, wow, people talk about this. Education is something. And I read a book, you may have seen it, called Summerhill. It's all about really free everything in the classroom or in the school. And so I was trying on all kinds of alternative ideas about education as a result of my courses at Xavier. And then my husband came home next. And we went to Columbus, and just part of Columbus is Worthington, and I found another St. Michael school. And so they hired me to teach 5th grade, but I said, I'm a pretty good art teacher, I think, you know, so could I teach art too? So I figured out how I might be able to like not teach math, which was, that was good for those kids. And and so I taught art to as many kids as I could talk them into letting me teach. And then at that time, I was a part of the Diocese of Columbus, and that's a 9-county diocese, lots of people. They would sometimes have these big meetings. So, and at one of those big meetings, I ended up being a charter member of the Constitution, and then ended up on the Curriculum Council, and all I knew was I needed people around me. I needed another Sister Denise. I needed colleagues. And that's sort of my drum from that moment on. Looking for colleagues, always. Who am I gonna work with? What are we gonna do? So, next. So, I figured I better get this degree thing taken care of. And so they hired me without the degree, but I was working on it, you know, got some credits from Xavier, and then I went back to Ohio State, and they took me in the art ed department, and that's where, again, another way that my life changed, because again, art education is a thing. People think about this. And, you know, by the way, it's not just, you know, art that William Gebhardt does. Art's been done around the world. I mean, I learned a whole lot. Okay, next. And this was probably, as I say, a life-changing workshop. The people in the Curriculum Council and my colleagues, I put together this sort of ragtag group of people. A couple nuns and a principal who loved art, and she had like 8 kids, and another woman who loved art, and she taught art in her school, and she had like 6 kids. We managed somehow to meet and talk about curriculum. And they decided that as their leader, I should go to this big workshop with Laura Chapman. Now she's on your list here. She's been here. So and she passed away, but she's actually taught at the University of Cincinnati, or she lived in Cincinnati. So next, she actually taught at Ohio State. So I read that book, changed my life. Laura Chapman went in that workshop. Why it was so important was that she had us enjoying ourselves in groups. We were doing what we now call inquiry-based learning. By working in these groups, she set up situations where we ended up asking questions. We'd work together and solve problems and so on. And I loved the way she approached. It was so much fun, and yet we were learning so much. She introduced the Ohio Guidelines. The workshop was to introduce the Ohio Guidelines, which are famous within the field of art education. They're foundational. And I got my little ragtag team together, and we signed up for we got somebody from the art ed department to teach us every week, come to my dining room table and give us a course. And so we learned more about this. And then we put together what we thought would help all the teachers in the diocesan schools. We called them super deans, something where we had activities and all kinds of things that teachers could do with their students and be consistent with the Ohio Guidelines. So, all right, next. So that was, by the way, my introduction to curriculum design and to create curriculum for others. That was an important piece, and that's what you're going to see I've spent my life doing. In the meantime, I had 2 wonderful kids, one of which came tonight, and the other was on the Zoom. And then we had a divorce, so the big split. And I had this new identity as a single mom, grad student, and a teaching assistant at Ohio State, getting my master's. I wrote my master's thesis, as you can see, moral education in the context of art education, where I really looked at Chapman, among others. And Chapman read my thesis. One of the faculty members sent it down to her, and she read it, and then I get another phone call. Oh, before we go there, the other people on my committee, because in order to write about moral education, I took several courses in moral philosophy in the philosophy department, and I worked with a philosopher of education. He turned out being on my master's committee, thesis committee, and so the phone call came from him. I was asked to come and be a doctoral student. They took one a year, and they wanted me to come and be their doctoral student for that year in philosophy of education. And I said yes, and the reason I tell you about this is that there are a couple things that came out of this. I taught a course, all of us, the grad students in there, taught the same course. It was called Introduction to Philosophy of Education. But it's not one of those courses where you get, this is so-and-so's philosophy, and that person's philosophy, and that person's philosophy. It was like how to really think about theory and in education, and how to use argument analysis and language analysis, and to really pick apart an argument that's being made. And it was geared toward teachers who would have access to, say, Instructor magazine, and just the kind of things that would sit around in faculty lounges, and they would read an article and learn. And this course taught them how to think critically and read critically, so that they weren't just, following along. So when I was teaching this, I noticed something really interesting. The women in the class would come to me and they'd say, "Oh my gosh, I was out with my husband and a couple friends of ours, and we were having cocktails or dinner or whatever, and I found myself entering into the conversation and challenging some of the things that were being said. I never do that." And so I found myself seeing that this was really important. This course was teaching women who, at that time, remember, we were, this is back then, who might not be so willing to engage in these conversations. They might be, like deferring to their husband or their boyfriend or whatever. So this was when I began to think about ideas like that. So that's early feminism. And then I'm going to talk about Richard Pratt's advice, and that is that he was and turned out being my dissertation advisor, and he said to me, Marilyn, he's from Connecticut, Marilyn, Marilyn, when you go looking for a job, all I can tell you is location, Marilyn, location. And because he was a swimmer, and he grew up in Connecticut on the shore, and he wanted to be back in the ocean, and he was stuck in Columbus, Ohio, as far as what he thought. So anyway, that advice will come to be important. Next. Okay, so I did not go to Maine because of location, but it turns out that this was a pretty cool place to go to. I got a call, and Mary Ann is on the Zoom. Thank you, Mary Ann. Mary Ann gave me basically my first higher ed job. I was her sabbatical replacement at the University of Maine. Took my kids up there. They still tell me how much they loved it because they got to walk to school, and the neighborhood was really good and the kids were fun. I had them bust all over the place too in Columbus. They didn't like that, but they did like being in Maine. Okay, and I love being there for lots of reasons that I'll tell you about in a minute. Now, next. Okay, one of the reasons I love being in Maine was that Mary Ann had a great office, and I used it. And she had these games, these resources that had been developed by Mary Erickson, who had been a doctoral student when I was a master's student at Ohio State, and Eldon Hatter, her colleague at Kutztown. And they were these games that, to look at art, to think about art historically, to think about art all over the world. There's a game called Token Response, you may have seen it. And all these games were on Mary Ann's bookshelf, and she gave me permission to use them with my students, and I did. And so when I got the call from Mary Erickson saying, we have this job at Kutztown University for somebody who has a background in philosophy who would be interested in starting an art criticism program for us within our program, courses, not a program, within our department. Why don't you think about applying? So I looked up Kutztown University. First of all, I knew she had gone to this place with a silly name, And I passed it every once in a while, and there's like Kutztown University off of like 78, there's a sign. And I'd seen that once or twice on my way to Maine. And, but I thought, okay, I'll look into this. Next. And then I did this. I said, whoa, there are mountains up there. There's an ocean like 3 hours away. There's New York City 2 hours. There's Philadelphia. There's Baltimore, and there's Washington, D.C. I think this is the location thing he was talking about. And so I went, yeah, let's go. So I ended up, next. That was like the first reason was to go to Kutztown was the location. The second reason were these two people. So Mary Erickson, this is the person who was in my, she was a doctoral student. I was in awe of her. She was so smart. She was so funny. She was so engaging as a teacher. And then I didn't know Eldon, but I got to know him then, but I knew about his games. And so I thought, I can't believe I'm going to go to a place where I'm going to work with these people. They were like, they had NAEA, they would, for the conference, they would have like a big workshop for 2 hours, and they'd have these stations and people going around from station to station. People were talking about what they were doing. That's the stuff they were doing was new in art education. Okay, next. These are some of the games. Their token response is one that people mostly know. Okay, next. So I headed off. Of course, the criticism thing was important. Those of you who worked with me the last 2 days know how important response to art is to me. So the idea of being able to start a program in criticism, are you kidding? Yes. So I headed off to Pennsylvania. Next. And this is what we looked like. That was our car. We had 1982 Toyota Tercel wagon with a single mom, 2 kids, a dollhouse, 2 gerbils, 3 bikes, 1 camp stove, a tent, cooler, 20 stuffed animals, and a cat. Right, Ben? But it felt like this. Next. And when I got there, I show you this. So these are the people who were in the faculty, and they were in every way. Every one of them had, I became, close to in one way or another, and I learned from. The house I show you because there's a little bit of irony or poetry, I guess, more. This is the former home of Mary Erickson. She lived there, and so it was the first place I visited when I got there. But it has since been purchased by the university, and she moved down the street. And but it's now the home of the Kutztown University Foundation, and I am so proud to be a member of the board of directors of the Kutztown University Foundation. We're raising money and spreading the word about how wonderful this university is and our programs and so on. So it's just ironic that that I get to come back to that building later after I retire. Yes. So one of the things, again, that close proximity to New York. I'm teaching art criticism. I'm also teaching a course called Aesthetic Experience in the Arts, and it's all the arts. And so my dear friend Tom Shantz he loved to go into New York, and he taught me how to do Soho. Now that's the area in New York that has all the galleries at that time. And so he taught me how to, go to the gallery, write these things down on 3x5 cards, and and we know which building we're gonna go to. We get on the elevator, go to the top, move our way down to the bottom, visiting galleries all along the way, and then deciding yay, nay as we went. So he taught me how to do Soho, and I am forever thankful for him for that. And we have had such great times visiting together, looking at art. So he was one of the first people who shared my love of art with, and we also loved organizing things, Stephanie. And so we would take these buses into New York, and we would sometimes, because we would take students in my aesthetic experience in the arts class. So we would go in to see galleries at first in the morning, and then we would go see a theater piece in the afternoon, and then in the evening we'd go to see dance. And then we would get on a bus and go home. One time we had 500 students, 10 buses, 50 kids on a bus, and we didn't lose a single student. I don't know whether they were scared to death We made them, we were so organized, and we never ever lost a student, which I think is saying something. Yeah, okay. Now in one of those encounters, now let's go back to the ideas. Remember me, I'm gradually changing my ideas about art. But there was a moment, and this was the moment, when I saw this show at MoMA, it changed the way I thought about art, because it was how art, and particularly in this case, printmaking, the print can be such a vehicle for social justice and be such a vehicle for messages that are important to all of us. So that was a turning point in my life. Yes, next one, next slide. Here's the catalog. So they had the galleries arranged by governments and leaders, race and culture, gender. This was, I forget, did I say what year it was? It was in maybe late 1987 or something. Anyway, so this was a life-changing exhibition for me. Yeah. As was this. Now, I don't know if you know about this, but we happened upon this show at the Cooper Hewitt Museum. It's called Mechanical Brides, Women and Machines from Home to Office. And they talked about how, women were sort of tied to these machines, and they showed a lot of advertisements that, had pink washers and dryers trying to make women feel like this is just what you want to be in the kitchen with these pretty pink appliances. And so the messages were out there, and it was such a great experience for me. And again, I've had these, little rumblings of feminism. I'm thinking about, things aren't really fair out there. And, just beginning to be aware. And this show was so important for me in developing my ideas about women and women in the workplace and so on. Okay, next. Okay, so elsewhere in the world of art education, the J. Paul Getty Trust had a huge endowment, and they decided to spend a ton of money on arts education. And so, in this case, $3.7 million for art education. And with that money came a whole movement in art education called discipline-based art education. And if I was teaching here tonight, we could spend a good time with that, but I'm not going to do that. Let's just say that it was like people were paying attention and, oh, okay. A lot of people were unhappy, a lot of people were really happy, so it was controversial, but it was nonetheless out there. Yeah. And Mary was somewhat involved. They had invited her to give some lectures and so on in their California institutes, and she had taken me out there as her grad student, and I was her assistant in one of the summer institutes in California. And the Getty offered an opportunity to have our own grant, to do our own institutes. And this is Mary, and this is Eldon, and this is me in my bowling shirt. that I got at TJ Maxx, my favorite store. I saved it forever in my attic, and I finally threw it out, I think maybe a year ago. And really, somebody at the thrift store is having fun with that. Okay. So we wanted to have a summer institute to introduce discipline-based art education, and we did. And we got tons of people there. Hundreds of people came. And it was always about, okay, teachers, art teachers, there's this stuff out there, there's this discipline-based art education. We're here to help you understand what it is and what it means for you and your students. Okay, next. But what we realized is that the Getty wanted the students or the teachers to use curriculum that was already written. And we said, this is ironic coming from somebody who writes textbooks now, but we said at the time, no, our teachers want to plan their own curriculum, but what we can do is we can create objectives and sort of concepts that are related to criticism and history and aesthetics and studio, which is what we did. And we called this the Balanced Articulated Sequential Instructional Core, with the idea that teachers could use these, and they did, by the way, and work with them as they did curriculum. So similar to what the standards that became, the first set of standards. Now, that was, we did that every year for a long time. We had people come from all over. And then at that time, I was invited to go to Florida to be the faculty member for the summer institutes that they were having. There were 3-week institutes, and they first in Sarasota and then in Tallahassee. And there I introduced the basic curriculum in art what we had done at Kutztown, and lots of the inquiry-based instruction with packets and the things that we were it was so much of what we did at Kutztown. So I met lots of new colleagues in the process of working in Florida as the faculty person for that institute. But probably the most important person I met was right there, Sydney Walker, who has a wonderful Alabama accent. She's notorious for saying, "What's the point?" If you're gonna do it, what's the point? And so Sydney and I became great friends and remained so. At this time, I was getting so many phone calls to come to all kinds of places and do what we did at Kutztown in those places. And if you turn the next slide. For example, we went to Illinois and Wisconsin, they had a collaboration, and they brought me in for their drawing out art together. New Jersey had Hands in Mind. Vermont, Eldon and I went to Vermont for 5 years and worked with them in a grant that they had. We went to Texas, worked with Texas in lots of different ways, and also with the Southeast Center in Tennessee. We did a lot of work with these other places, and in every case, I took the basic curriculum with me and used it in one way or another. So we were making, those ideas were getting out there. Okay, next. But those ideas were also kind of getting infused into our program at Kutztown. We had a course, it's a mouthful. The course was the teaching of art history, criticism, aesthetics, and studio. So we ended up calling it the teaching of course. Oh, Dr. Stewart, are you teaching the teaching of course? So that was our teaching of course, and everybody, I think, who in the program had to take the course. And it was really about creating packets, creating stations that had inquiry-based activities that the students would encounter. And the reason I have so many pictures, I have tons of these pictures, is that I would take the pictures of the students with their stations at the end of the course so they could use it in the interview process. So, okay. In the meantime, I was teaching, continuing to teach criticism, both at the undergraduate and the graduate level. And at the graduate level, I developed this thing that the students then called criticism on the go, where we would travel on weekends and go all over the place. At least one of those weekends would be an overnight, and we would go as far as Massamoka in North Adams, Massachusetts. We go to Baltimore, we go to DC, and so on. We'd spend the night. But we'd move all around. The idea was not to go to New York, but to go to places in the region so teachers could see where they could go to have aesthetic experiences, to have an opportunity to see art and respond to it. And they didn't have to make it a full day. They could just leave it on Sunday afternoon and go out to the local university gallery, for instance. And I have this in here because I often would be the driver of these 18-passenger vans. And this is me after I parallel parked this. I was very proud. One time I had one of those vans, and I had this, they were allowed to bring their significant others or friends or whatever, and no children. Just good. Anyway, so I had this one student was married to a cop. And so he's sitting in the back when I'm driving. I'm like, I hope this is okay. Okay. Now, so I got a phone call from Wyatt Wade, and I include Helen because she didn't actually make the call. I got the call from Wyatt Wade, who is the president of Davis Publications, and he wanted to meet with me at NAEA and talk with me about Helen's idea, which was that they wanted me. Now, I don't know exactly how they knew of me, but they did. And they asked me if I would consider starting a series. And I said, well, yeah. And I said, what I'd like to do would be to come up with a series recognizing how busy teachers are and how hard it is to stay abreast of what's going on in the field. I'd like to have a series of books that take on issues and topics in the field of art education and make them, put them in language, not the teachers don't, need to have broken down language, and I just mean put it in easy to understand language for all these various topics. And I'm still doing that today. We have a brand new book that came out just this spring on ethics and decision making in art education, and another one that's coming in assessment, and Leslie's watching, from Leslie Gates, and we're working on that, and we've got some other ideas too. Maybe one will come from here. So, okay. Now, in the middle of all this, art teachers, art educators end up being leaders. Watch out. You end up being a leader because you know how to do a lot of stuff at the same time. So you end up being a leader. I ended up being the chair of 2 different dean searches, and I ended up going head to head with the president because we, just like you do. And so I guess he was impressed because he called me and said, I want you to apply for this assistant provost position. And I said, that was what I said. Sounds good. What's a provost? And so I found out very quickly, and I was in that office for 2 years. What I found out was that I could actually do some work, but and the things that I did do turned out to be things that I cared deeply about. For example, we really worked with the curriculum routing procedures, like how does this curriculum go through the process. I created I got a big grant for new faculty orientation, put that together. The aim was collegiality and thinking about working across disciplines and having people, after they spend like 2 days together overnight and so on, that they would then tend to be collaborative across the campus. Then I also got a big grant to help create the Center for the Enhancement of Teaching. And out of that, we did something called Partners in Pedagogy, borrowing from something they were doing at Harvard. And so I did do some things in that provost office. I found out that I could be successful, but I missed teaching. And I also knew that it was too early for me to leave my faculty position. I needed to write the book that I wanted in my series. I said to them at the time, can I write a book in my own series? And they said yes. And I wanted to write a book next. I wanted to write this book. I wanted to write a book that taught people to think critically about using issues about art as a catalyst for critical thinking. And so I did. I left the provost office, I went back to faculty, and I worked on this book. And really, it goes back, the full circle thing is that it goes back to the empowerment piece of the course that I taught at Ohio State, the idea of how important it is for people to learn the skills involved in critical thinking. And so that's what that book is about, okay? Now, again, out of the blue, I get this call, Lonnie Duke on the line. She was the head of the Getty Education Institute for the Arts. So we'd met lots of times, and because I was involved in various things that the Getty sponsored. But she said, how would you like to come out and be the visiting scholar for a whole year? We'll pay your way, we'll fly your partner out, we'll put you up in Brentwood, we'll give you a car. Yeah, count me in. So for a full year, I was out there. But I want to talk about it. So it was a great place. If you've not been there, you need to go there. I was there the year that it opened, and I've got stories, but we're going to move on. But what this gave me was something that the provost office gave me, and that was the ability to stand back and step away from art education, step away and see the larger picture. And so, as an administrator, you get to do that. You get to see how things work with the larger world, world out there. And that's what I did at the Getty, because we were dealing with chief state school officers in every state, principals. We worked with Business Week, trying to get them to get articles about the importance of the arts. And then there was a project that was sponsored by Annenberg and the Getty, and there's some other sponsors as well, funders. And it was called the TTAC, which is Transforming Education Through the Arts Challenge. And so that was sort of beginning to happen while I was still at the Getty, and then it went into full force when I left. But in the meantime, I get this call when I'm in my little apartment in Brentwood, and this is who it is. This is this guy who says, "This is your wake-up call." So this is the Getty looking from an aerial view. I'm out there, and he had visited one time. This is Wyatt Wade. Remember Wyatt? He's the one that asked me to do that series. He said, I talked to Laura Chapman. She recommended that you be the person who does the next middle school series, because she doesn't want to do it. She had done one before, but she thinks that you'd be the person to do it. I was like, really? But at the time, I wasn't sure that that's what I wanted to do. Again, these choices that you make. So, and I was kind of thinking maybe I wasn't sure where I wanted to go. But he was persistent. He called me. He's out of Massachusetts, so it's 3 hours difference. He would call me his time, 9 o'clock, my time, 6, and say, "This is your wake-up call." Here he is. This is never a dull moment with this guy. So this is Wyatt. Unfortunately, we lost him this last year, and here he's apparently in the office up at Davis being Robert Mapplethorpe. Here he's just being silly. He's a great leader. His son Julian is now the president of Davis and doing a great job too. But at any rate, so that was this call that I got that took me into the world of thinking about textbooks. I had never thought about textbooks before, about me creating them. But anyway, I said, well, next slide. I said, well, if you'll let me do it with Eldon. Now, Eldon had been in the Peace Corps, first wave of Peace Corps volunteers. He had a wonderful way of thinking about the world. We worked well together, and I said, I think Eldon and I could do this. And so Wyatt was all okay with that, because by this time, Eldon was the editor of School Arts, which is also published by Davis Publications. Okay, next. And Eldon had done his dissertation on at the time, what was called multiculturalism. And at that time, he had talked about the importance of thinking about the individual within the local community and then within the global community. And so using that as our basis, we came up with a plan to do 3 books. One is the personal journey, Art, a Personal Journey, Art, a Community Connection, and then Art, a Global Pursuit. And that has now been we've had 2 editions of this out. Okay, next. One of the things that we wanted to do too, and some of you have seen this already because I talked about curriculum in the keynote yesterday, we knew of the work of Ernest Boyer and his ideas about human commonalities. And we've learned it from some of our people who were working with these ideas in Nebraska and Florida and Tennessee and so on. And so we decided to adopt and embrace his ideas and what he said was, you could design curriculum for a whole school, for school that would go from kindergarten through grade 16, which was like through college. And you could design math and science and all the humanities around these ideas and just scaffold them and make it more sophisticated as you investigated these ideas from those different discipline perspectives. Okay. At the time too, my ideas were shifting. This book came out by Ellen DeSaniaki, and the title of the book is What is Art For? Now, that aesthetics book, I spent a lot of time asking the question and having kids ask the question, what's art? What is art? I had my head turned totally around when I read this book and thought, oh, there's another way of asking the question, what is art for? And that leads you to a whole lot of different places. So this was an important book for me to read. The answer that a lot of times cultural anthropologists give is that art is for decoration, communication, and celebration. Another person whose ideas were important to me at the time were Graham Chalmers. He wrote this book, and I love this list, and we used some of these in our Art, a Personal Journey. We use artists as storytellers, artists as myth makers, artists as catalysts for social change, and so on. Those became the titles of units that we had in that book. We had to change the one that we had, magicians, because Texas wouldn't allow us to have that. Yeah, so anyway, there's a long story of that. Okay, next. So what we were, the other thing I wanted to tell you is that with the middle school, we said, we want these big ideas to ground the curriculum. And Wyatt said, I don't know, that's not the way we do this. We always organize our textbooks around art forms and the elements and principles of design, art forms, and media. So for example, you'd have a chapter on line, shape, color, you'd have a chapter on printmaking, sculpture, painting, and so on. We said, no, we don't want to do that. We want to work with ideas, themes. I don't think you ought to do that. And I have to tell you, during that middle school process, they closed the book on it. And they called us and said, this same thing isn't working. We don't think we're going to do it. We're going to close down this project. And we drove up to Worcester, Massachusetts and talked them down about that. And so we won, and we got themes, and then the elementary series, K through 6, also is grounded in those Ernest Boyer's human commonalities, and we take those themes and explore them with the elementary series as well. Okay, how are you doing? What is it? Oh, it is? Oh my gosh, why didn't you tell me? Okay, so we're gonna move. My life's gonna go so fast. You wouldn't believe. Okay, so back at Kutztown, new people, new ideas. Particularly ideas about contemporary art being important and social justice and social change. Keep going. We read all kinds of books, and we put together these institutes. Come on, next. An important piece of my life was working with John Quick-to-See Smith. That's a piece that we bought of hers and have in our house. This piece in and of itself is enough to sort of change your mind and ideas of for those of you in this program, the ideas that you'll find very familiar. Okay, and the TTAC project, we were able to put together this, we were asked to write this book, Rethinking Curriculum, based on the Transforming Education Through the Art project, and let's keep going. Since then, there are lots of collaborations that I've done as a result of these, again, phone calls that I get. There's Sydney Walker and there's Steve Carpenter, who was here last year. And we've worked together with Ann Wolcott in Virginia Beach School District. And so lots of projects, let's keep going. Okay, with kids, with school districts, new colleagues. And here, I just want to make this point. The new colleagues are so important because you wait and you listen and you find new ideas, and then it affects the way you think, and that invariably comes out in not only the programs that you're offering, but also in the way you're thinking about art education and what you're sharing with the world in scholarship, okay? And again, new colleagues, new collaborations, because I want to get to the next. Okay, so talk about a phone call. Judy Chicago called me and said, I got your name, I would like for you to create the curriculum for the dinner party that's about to be installed at the Brooklyn Museum. And I just said, I can't possibly do that. I need colleagues to do that. I have a lot of feminist friends and colleagues in my university. We'll take it on, but we'll do it collaboratively. So this is us working on it. And we had an institute, and we had teachers come, hundreds of teachers. Somebody who came yesterday had been there. And we had them work with us to create lessons. We call them encounters. Next, these are some of the teachers in the encounters. That curriculum is housed permanently at Penn State. Would have been at Kutztown, but we don't have the means. Next, and we had those institutes for the dinner party through 2016. And we would take everybody into New York and see the dinner party and so on. And the content for that institute became the content for a course that we offered as a gen ed course in our department, and several of us taught the course, and we used the content from the institute for the course. Okay, next. And these are kind of things that people made. We had a lot of response, and I just want to read you this. Next. This is a football player. It says, "Thank you for taking me out of my comfort zone. I never thought I would have taken a course like this." Read this. "I can honestly say that I have a totally different view on women, art, and life." That's what you want to hear. So that came out of a Women in the Arts course, yep. And then I got another call. Actually, I got that call like 3 days after Judy called, and I agreed to do the dinner party. I got a call from Carol, who is on here. And Carol said, "We need you to do education. I got your name from Lonnie Duke." And so I've been working with Carol ever since for Craft in America. It's a PBS series, and we are doing educator guides next. If you're not familiar, you need to be. Next. This is a team of teachers working that we've worked together. Next. Way Out Craft, you know, the Delatorre brothers are amazing with glass blowing. Next. And we can more traditional things. And next. Next. Okay, and then we do the educator guides. So take a look at the educator guides. All the ideas that you've heard me talk about so far are in those educator guides in terms of how we organize and themes and inquiry-based and so on. Yes? Next. It's not always been work, it's been sometimes play. We went on a pottery, this is Carol and I at a pottery crawl up in Minnesota. There I am, Carol, you know, and arranged for me to meet Mary Jackson, who is a wonderful national treasure. Does the sweetgrass baskets, and that's one I bought from her. Next. And we put together a summer institute. Yes, next. And I just want to say that I think it comes full circle. This whole idea with the dinner party and Craft in America, those two things kind of come back to my early days and appreciating my grandmother's work and so on. And I've always recommended this book, Anonymous Was a Woman, because I think the message is clear. If it says anonymous, it was probably a woman who made it. Yep, next. Now I have two passions, curriculum and criticism, yep. And those came into the standards. I'm not gonna spend a lot of time with this. Okay, we did the standards, the new standards. This is us working on those. That call was important because we created the new set of visual art standards, and I think that they really capture what it is that we wanna do in art education. Although we're gonna look at, we're gonna shift and change again. Next. Next. Here we are at our house. We had a big, you know, celebration party. Hi, Dennis. Next. And the work continues. We, you know, trying to make it available for teachers. So we put together stuff on the NAEI site. I wrote this article trying to explain the standards. Olivia did as well. Next. And my friend Amy and I have gone around and tried to do workshops on putting the standards into action. So I graduated in 2017 from Kutztown. It was the hardest decision I think I've ever made to leave my teaching. But I'm glad that I did. Next. I'm still doing a lot of reflection. My kids would say I don't do enough. Next. But I did have this project that I did. My COVID project was this book. This is a middle school book, and you've all heard a lot about that so far, so I won't spend any time on it. We'll just say that was the project. This is where it was written. Those are my doggies. And then the next big thing is that, this is Carol calling, this is really huge, handwork, 2026. This is gonna be a huge thing, celebrating 250 years of American craft and handwork, okay? And you'll be hearing more about it. In the meantime, these days, we're still going out with Tom Schatz looking at art. We're still there's my other art looking guy, Steve. We go out to dinner. We have a place in Philly. We have our place in the country. Here's my family who came here tonight. We go to the Symphony, the Kimmel Center in Philly. We're having a great time. Next. And I just want to say that I went to get my global entry. I had to go all the way to Newark. And I went up to this guy, he goes, "What do you do?" I said, "I'm retired." "What did you do?" "I helped art lovers get ready to change lives." He said, "Awesome." I said, "Yep." Okay. And so there you go. I've spent a lot of time thinking about art teachers my whole career, and I love you, and I wish you the very best. I'm so happy to have been here. Thank you so much for having me and allowing me to, share what it's like to get old and think about what you've been up to. Yeah, thank you.
Well, we have a special presentation from our team, Dr. Ryan Fisher.
Wow, as you were talking the whole time, I just kept thinking about the countless number of people that you've impacted.
Oh, how's that?
I think about the students that you taught. I
You're
think
making me
about those elementary students, but then college students, generations of college students that are probably some of them now teaching college students.
Yeah, that's true.
All of the kids that you've impacted through the curriculum. I originally was kind of doing math, and then I started to think, well, with the curriculum, you've probably impacted millions of lives. How many people can actually say that in their lifetime? I remember being like their age, thinking, I just want to impact kids like me. And then here you are at this point in your life, and you've impacted millions of kids. So thank you for the impact that you've had. Thank you for sharing your story, your gift, your passion. The best thing that I've heard from her say is that she's still learning, she's still growing, she's still adapting. She wasn't that professor who got static and stale.
That's right. Coming from a dean.
Coming from the dean. She's been retired for now almost 8 years, and she doesn't act retired at all. She's still producing things.
That's what I say. My family keeps saying, when are you going to stop?
So we present this little token of appreciation for your amazing impact on, of course, the art ed profession, but on the entire discipline of the arts. So thank you for your time today and for your impact.
I saw this earlier. I think it's beautiful. I'm so excited, really. This will go out there.
So thank you, everyone joining us on Zoom. We really appreciate you being here.
Hey, hi.
There's lots of really loving messages on the Zoom. I definitely want to read them through with you.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, you'll cry again.
I'm sure. Brian made me cry. I just met him.
Thank you, everyone, for being here. We really appreciate your time and your love and support for art education.
Gosh, yeah, you need some
Lovely.
messages.
Really? So they're talking to me?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay, so he's saying, Marvin's